welcome to these specially recorded videos for the Power Automate mastering course, and I'm going to be doing these videos in a module by module basis, starting with module 1, and this is on Excel data connectors. So the reason for this module, the idea of this, is to identify quite early introduction to certain things that you'll see later, and this includes working with arrays of data and data manipulation through records. And we use Excel because it's nice and visual, but it also provides an introduction to things such as JSON. So what is JSON? It's a JavaScript sort of subset, and its purpose in life is to allow us to work with structured, defined data. So in most cases you'll work with arrays of data in JSON structure. So if you imagine what an array is one or multiple dimensions of information that can be stored in lots and lots of different sections or cells. So here is a singular value array, and you can see it's just sort of listing some of the key power tools in Office 365. If I looked at that in code, in the way it's stored and translated through Power Automate, it would look something like this. So notice the square brackets using a data array, and then inside that we've just got all the different values inside double quotes and separated with commas. Now this is important because when we use Excel and various other tools, the actual data is passed from the data connection to Power Automate, and the way that we can manipulate and to intercept that data and work with it is through JSON. So we'll be doing some example JSON syntax later on. If we work with multiple data sets such as this, then you'll find that this is really a sort of an object array, and its purpose as an object array is that I might need to store, as you can see, more than one value to identify a record or row. So I've got the ID, I've got the action to do, and then the status of that particular action, and that's just kind of a little table representing tasks. How that would look in a JSON is something like that. It's a bit more complicated at first, but really what's happening here is you can see that we've got the name of the column that we had. So remember, we have the columns ID, to do, and status, but these are put in quotes, then a colon, and then after that the value, and then a comma, and then we then use the next column or structure. So this is a multiple object and array, and the difference between a data array and an object array is an object array allows us to pass through multiple different data, non-consecutive data, but it also allows us to identify it by property headers, or sort of headings, if you like. This is going to come into handy on later modules when we start manipulating the data, as you'll see. So in order for me to pass this through as an example in Excel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a brand new team. So I love showing teams for this particular course because it's all about producing flows that can be managed by many owners, but also run by many users, as opposed to our essentials course, which is really run from your own personal flows collection, if you like. So I'm going to open up a team. There we go. Wait for my page to pop up. There we go. I'm going to go and create a brand new team. And as we're using an academic license, this might be different to what you see when you create a team. So when you click create a team, if you're using an academic license, you'll see these team types. And I'm going to click other. And that is so that if you don't have an academic, you'll just get this kind of option. You'll probably get it asked if you want a private or public. All I'm doing is creating the equivalent of a private team. And I'm going to put in there to begin with HR, and put in the description, human resources. And that's just my demonstration example for the team I'm building. And as I say, I'm going to mark this as a private team. Excellent. I'm going to add a few other people. So I'm going to add my delegate B01 as my co-owner. I'm using these B accounts. So I'm using B00. B01 is going to be my co-owner. And I'm going to add a few others. Delegate B10. and delegate B11. Okay, so just to recap there, B01 is an owner, and B1011, I will leave them as members. Superb. Click close, and now I've created a brand new team, and my next step is to go in and add into this team's general channel a new flow app. So I'm going to add a tab. I'm going to type in flow. It's very annoying. It will change eventually, but at the moment, at time of this video, you're still searching for flow. So I'm going to add a flow. This is effectively, when you create a team flow, it is exactly what it says in the tin. It is when you go into your flow service, it is building team flows. So I'm going to click add. I'm going to be using it to build that nice Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to stay in the browser. I could open up desktop applications and go crazy. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my files tab now, and I'm going to create a brand new blank Excel workbook. So I don't want to use any guided examples in this delivery in case you want to play along and do it at the same time. So I'm going to call this stationary audit. I've not put a space in. I like to keep the name simple when using examples, so it's nice and simple there. Click create. Now I'm using the online. There are some limitations with using online, but for the purposes I'm using, hopefully I should be able to do everything through the browser. So I've been quite happy with this. So first thing I'll do is build this nice simple table. The table is going to grab any stationary items that's stored in a SharePoint list, and I'll be building that again in this module 1 as well, and I'll be building some extra columns. And then the idea is that as people order stationery, as we get completed items or if we get requested items, I would like specific items to be captured from the list and then placed into this Excel spreadsheet. And this would be so that if I want to place a phone order, I will have the spreadsheet. I can take it offline, I can take it with me, make a phone call and order the stationary items that have been requested. So I'm going to have an order ID, and this is to represent that when you're working with Excel tables, to be able to remotely connect them through a Power Automate, Power Automate needs to find a way of guaranteeing that it's working with the correct row or correct record. So we need some sort of primary key, and you ideally need some sort of column that represents the order ID. So next to that, we're then going to have the task. Sorry, item, not task. I'm going to put in item, quantity, who requested it, and when they requested it. Okay, now for this to work, I need to turn this into a proper Excel table. At the moment, it looks like a table to me and you, but there are no structures that Power Automate or any other database could rely on for that. So we have to take that data, and the best way to do this is if I just put in a number there just for now, and then put in an item such as paper, quantity, and I'll just put in anything in here, it doesn't really matter. But what I want to do is just put one dummy row of data. So when I highlight this table, I go to the insert tab at the top, and I'm going to insert this into a proper table structure. Okay, the box will come up. Whether you're using the desktop or using the online browser, doesn't matter. You're going to get it come up with a little box that says, does your table contain headers? Yes, they do. And the idea is it will leave row 1 alone, and the other rows will be added in as data. So I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, what it does with the header row stands out from the rest. After that, I could delete that data, but I'm going to leave that in there. Just want to see what happens when I run this flow and it's already got data in the list, because I want it to add or append new rows of data in this Power Automate that I'm going to create. So that's job done. And I'm going to come back to this list later. What I need to do now is create the SharePoint list where the users will then go in and create and request their stationery items they want me to purchase. So I'm going to go into the Files tab again, which is a lazy way of getting to the SharePoint site that's built for you, connected to this team. So I'm going to go open in SharePoint. There we go. Now it always places you into the Documents library because we click that command from the Files tab. It's assuming you want to get to SharePoint and work and look with the files. I don't, but it's there. So I'm going to click the Home button first. Just takes me to the home page. So I'm now looking at a SharePoint site that's built for that team, and I'm going to take advantage of that site by adding some functionality in there that I want my users to work with, including a brand new list. Okay, so I can do it this way. The other way you can do this is through the site contents, in case you're used to doing it this way. If I do new list up here, the difference is you can see it's got a much bigger box and it allows me to choose from other features. That's quite significant for me to show you that in the video, because some of the guided activities in the book do come up with this particular box. Some of them actually get you to work with existing list boxes, which might be useful. So I'm going to just leave that alone, but I'm going to put in stationery as my list name. And then at the bottom right corner, I'm going to click Create. Okay, I don't want to go mad, as I always do. I like to keep these examples simple. So my list is only going to have two new columns, or I'm going to borrow a column and add a new one. And then I'm going to take some of the other columns that are provided with the list to complete. So I'm going to have 4 columns in total doing all the work. The first one's title, which I don't like the word title. I want it to represent a stationary item, not a stationary title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my settings gear cog in the top right corner. I'm going to consider changing my list settings. This is the proper way to rename the column. And then from there, I'm just going to scroll down. There's the title. While I'm here though, I'm also going to grab the created and created by, which are the names of people that actually create the new or upload a new item to a list or library. And I'm going to change their names as well, so they are modified and modified by, or sorry, requested and requested by. So going to click title first. I can't change its physical original name. All I can do is change the name the user sees. So bear in mind when I actually create this and call it item, and I'm not going to do anything else, I'm just going to change the name that's displayed to the user. The most important thing is, no matter what I name these columns or rename these particular columns, it's still got the same original name for the column. That's quite important to note, because some data connections work with the original name, or what we call the localized name, or the display name, which is I call the title, which is kind of easier. So I'm going to click OK there. Okay, and now I'm going to go into the other two, which is the created, and replace that with requested. And I'm going to cheat here and copy that text so I can manipulate the created by and call it requested by. Okay, and the last column I need is a column that allows them to specify the quantity of items they want to order. So I'm going to put in a, just for the example, a number type field. Could be anything really, depends on what you're storing. And I'm going to say the default value, just in case they sort of forget, I'll make that default to at least one item. Click Save. So for the demonstration in Module 1, I only need those 4 columns, because it's going to take that data and it's going to place them into the actual Excel table. So there will be other columns. I'll add them later as and when I need them. But at the moment, the other 2 that I modified aren't here. So to add them, I need to add them to the view of this list. So I want to place them here. To do that, you go back into the settings, you go back into the list settings, and right at the bottom you can see a list of the views. I've only got one, which is the default view, and I want to customize the default view to include the requested by and the requested. Now, in my spreadsheet, I had requested by, requested. These are the other way around. It's just to prove that it doesn't matter which order the columns are in one source or the other, it still works. But what I need to do to make this, better is prepare some example content in the first place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click New. I'm going to put in some proper items: paper, A4 plain, stapler, 2 of them, and one more. I'm just going to put in the staples. Can't have a stapler without staples. One box will do fine. Click Save. So my Power Automate's purpose is for me to collect those items and put them into Excel. And then I'm going to tweak it, I'm going to improve it over other modules. I'm going to say only grab items that have been required or requested but haven't been approved or processed yet. So I want it to be very specific to the data. I just want to keep it simple for now. So I'm going to go back to my Teams tab, and now I'm going to go into the flow. So I'm going to build a flow based on a manual run. I would like the flow to be run manually by myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search for a brand new flow, and I'm going to have this as an instant flow, which means I need to trigger it in some way myself. So this would be to get latest stationery requests. And I'm going to manually trigger the flow. Later, when we get to a model that's all about scheduled flows, I will change the trigger so it will be running this flow automatically at midday Friday. So when I come back from lunch, the list of items to order that I have to do every Friday is going to be already prepared for me in an Excel spreadsheet. So click Create. Manually trigger the flow, and the first thing I want to do is a new step, an action step, connecting to the Excel online business. So the important thing is there are actually 2 different types of Excel functionality or data connections. You have the Excel online business, which is the Office 365 one. You have the Excel online, and we put OneDrive in brackets because it's the free or the personal Microsoft account Excel that you get. So very, very key. I'm going to use the Excel Online Business. It's going to connect to the Office 365 tool, and then what I'm going to do is going to get it to create a row and plug it into my worksheets. So because I'm basing it on a table, I'm going to have a add a row into a table. Okay. So I don't know if you saw, you can rewind that and play it slowly, but because this was the first time that I'd actually used the Excel data connector whilst inside the flow, it had to go and check to make sure my connection to that data connector was valid. So it had to go and quick check that. If you get any issues, you should be able to then go and run the connections manually. You can do this from several places, and we'll show you how to do that later. For now, I'm going to go and tell it where that file is stored. So if I click on that drop down list, it's ideally looking for that in various different sites. Now bear in mind, I put that file, I'm going to duplicate my Teams tab so I don't lose my flow that I'm halfway through building, but I did put that into my files tab of my general channel. Please note, in case you're not aware, all files in Teams is actually stored inside SharePoint. Okay, and to prove that, if I quickly go into my SharePoint site here, go to the Documents Library, every channel is a folder, and in each folder are the files. So I essentially want it to pull up the website here and the files from here. So to do that, I point to the SharePoint site in question, and because this is a brand new one, it should have picked up this SharePoint site. Where I can pull up the Documents Library and then pull up the file. And to specify the file, if I click the little folder there, go inside the general channel, and there's the stationery audit. Okay, now I didn't name the table because sadly, whilst you're in the Excel Online, that's one of the things that you don't see. If I was in the Excel desktop, I could go into the Design tab where I would have the option on the very left hand side to give the table a name. Maybe Microsoft will change that feature. There are several places you can do it purely for speed and purposes. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to leave it alone. So in here, I'm going to say, yeah, just use the one that's called Table 1. That was the brand new table I built. Now that I've selected the table inside the file that's inside that library, inside that site, it knows all the columns that are contained in there. So what I need to do now is specify the information I want to place into that option. So for now, I'm going to leave the order ID empty, as you'll see, and I'll cover that later. But what I want to do is grab from my SharePoint site, I want to grab the item from the SharePoint list, place it in here, grab the quantity, and the requested by and the requested, and place them in. Don't be fooled, these are not the SharePoint fields, these are the columns sitting in my Excel. What I don't have at the moment is a connection to my Excel list. So because I need to provide that before I can pull the data in, that action has to go above the Excel action. So I'm going to click at the top here, add an action, and now I'm going to connect to SharePoint. And the important thing is that I want to go and get item. Now, do I want to get item or do I want to get items? No, I want to get all of the items. I want to go through the entire list of items and actually pull them in. And for this, it's kind of a bit naughty, but one of the later modules covers something called for each. So I'm going to show it right now because it's kind of nice and simple. I use get items. Items is a collection of objects, whereas get item, singular, is one object. So I'm going to go into the site address. I'm going to connect to my new HR site. Downside is I can't see it. So I'm going to go into here in my tab at the top and grab the address either from here carefully, or I can be quick and lazy. I can just right click on the button for the home and then copy link. If I switch back to there, I can go to the bottom, enter custom value as you do, and then I just paste in the address. Okay, once that's been established, I can then choose the list, and only modern lists. So old legacy calendars, task lists won't appear in here. These are all based on Power Automate, only looks at modern style architecture, so that will be there. List limit entries to the folder, so I can actually go in and choose if I want items from that folder level, because you can create subfolders in lists. I'm going to leave it blank. I don't have any folders, but I'm going to leave it blank anyway, so it pulls up all the data. And then underneath that, if I expand my add a row, I'm able to get the information from there and place it into here. What I haven't done, which is probably a good idea always, is to rename and make these actions a little bit more descriptive. So get items from stationery in HR site. So whatever it requires to make it nice and clearly stand out. And then I'm going to put in there a rename to say add a row into, instead of a table, stationery audit. Table. Okay, so now that I've done that, I've basically got all the information I need and prepared that in advance in this previous action. And now when I click in here, I can go and grab all the data. It's now populated. So from here, I'm going to go and grab the items name from the list. And all of a sudden, can you see as soon as I populate, the apply to each pops in, because I'm working with get items plural in the box above. Now that I've done that and I've started working, it's automatically put in this apply to each. Now when this happens, and it will happen because it needs it, it's saying, look, how do I identify each value from the box above? So if I get rid of that value, I don't have to, I'll get that value. You can see that that is actually the way that it goes and grabs the identity of each item in the range of each item using that value there. So it's pre-populated it. I don't have to do a thing, don't have to change it or tweak it in any way. It knows how to grab that value of each item in the collection of items. All I've got to do is just carry on working. So that kind of a bit disorientating, because you're working away, all of a sudden this big box pops up, repopulates it, all collapses, and it's a bit weird. But it's just building it on your behalf to say, look, you said a for each, or you actually did a collection of items. We need that collection to be put into an each to get each one. And what it'll do is it will automatically loop. What the apply to each does is it loops through all the actions, then goes back again, loops again, and keeps doing it until all the items in the list have been run through these selections here, this choice of actions. So what I'll do is just populate it. So quantity, requested by, which should pick up the name that I gave it, but because there's so many different choices, because it's a person picker or people picker field, I want to just grab the person's display name, and then the requested will be the date field. That should be on its own. There it is. There you go. That's it. That is all the flow's going to do is trigger. I'm then going to get it to go through all the items in the site's stationery list, and then apply them and append them to the end of my table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this flow. The beauty of this is we haven't got to wait 5 hours in the video for everything to run. When I run this flow, I'm going to trim out all the waiting time. And you'll be amazed how much quicker this video will go compared to the live trading session. So I'm just going to go out of this flow. And all I'm going to do at this point is just select it and then run it manually. As normal, first time I run it, it's going to ask me to confirm that these services are okay to check into. So I'm going to click green. Yeah, click continue, and then run the flow. That was quick. Run the flow successfully. Cool. Click done. Magic. Just going to go in there and check that that actually has happened. So I'm going to go into the green tab at the top here for the SharePoint site. There's my stationary audit. I could do it from here or in Teams. Doesn't really matter. It's the same file. Okay, and it's worked. The only thing that has been added obviously is the ID, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But it's allowing me to work with this table of data, which is really good. Okay, so now I have shown how to add rows to data, which is quite straightforward. What's a little trickier is being able to work with existing data. See, in order for Power Automate to grab the correct row, it needs to have a unique identifier, a unique ID. Now, I could create my own. There's only one problem. If I'm generating my own ID, how to make Power Automate generate a brand new unique number for each record. For example, here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the idea of this is that if I delete row 4, the next record should never use 4 again. It should use 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. And the problem is Power Automate doesn't know how to work with these IDs because it didn't generate them. It wasn't Office 365 to generate them. So in order to generate these, you have to do this in one of two ways. You either use Power Apps and connect your data source to Power Apps, and Power Apps will create a Power App ID. Or you can do a one-off spin thing, which is in the guided book, and that is to get Power Automate to create the ID for you. Now, you'd only need to actually put this action in once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as you can see, I've got this column already prepared, but that's no good. So I'm going to delete that column, and I'm going to get Power Automate to generate the unique ID for me, and create that. So to do this, it's really weird. I can either put it into the existing Power Automate, or I could create a brand new Power Automate just to create the ID and then delete the Power Automate and never use it again. I'm actually going to put it in this existing one, which means that as it creates this new ID, it's also going to add those rows of data again. That's great for me because for this demonstration, I just want to beef that up a bit more, make it a bit more powerful. So I'm going to go into my flow. I'm going to add an action using the Excel tool. And this is where I'm going to use the option to say add a key column to a table. And once again, I specified the same site, same library, same file that I used on the previous step, and of course the same table. You can call that key column anything you like. You can call it task ID, call it ID, whatever you like. But you see it comes up prefixed with the Power Apps ID. And the idea is that if you are going to connect to this table, Excel table, through Power Apps, this is the first one it looks for and assumes. And if that is the case, you're normally advised to leave it alone. I've not had any issues like that when I've changed it. But ultimately, the key column is whatever name you want that column to have. So if I call that one task ID, let's call it request ID actually. So I'll call it request ID, and that's the one I want. I'm going to save that now, and I'm going to run that rule. Okay, good stuff. So I'm going to run that flow. That should create the ID for me. Yeah, successfully. And if I now go back to the Teams file and click and open it, there you go, it's added a new request ID column at the end, and it should pre-populate those numbers. Now that's quite important, and what I can do then is go back to my Power Apps flow, and I could then remove that particular action. It's done its job, if you like. So I'm just going to go in there and delete that. And here's one I made earlier. I've just done an example that's going to get data using that. But again, the idea is you just need to make sure that it knows exactly which one it's grabbing. So if I go into here, get it to go to the request ID, and so I want to grab the 4th record, or whatever the one has the 4th ID, which is probably that one there. And that way I can go manipulate it, do what I want with it. If I want to delete a row, then the idea is that with the delete a row, get a row, anything that's manipulating existing data, you need to specify the key column and then which value it's looking for. But if I add new data to the row now, what will happen is it should automatically populate with new numbers. So if I run this again, I'll leave the get a row, but I'm actually going to go and get the items again from here and save that. I'm hoping for 8, 9 and 10 or whatever it's going to be on the other items. So let's go and run that again. Yep, seems to work successfully. So if I go back into my book, I should have closed it down. Do a little dance, wait for it to update, and then reopen it. Come on, you. And there we go. So it's added the new items at the bottom, and it's got the information at the end there, which is great. Excel data connectors has one trigger, which is to go in and work for the selected row, and the idea is that I can go in and click a row in the table and then have a flow pick up the row I've selected and go and pass it through to all the actions, and the other actions are below, so I can actually delete and manipulate data. I can even work with worksheets and tables within the Excel file as well. So just a quick introduction to the Excel data connection. It's not a fantastic tool. Its real purpose was to be able to take data from an Excel, from a SharePoint list, from a team list, and be able to put it into a brand new Excel workbook, like the export to Excel does in the SharePoint list already. So it kind of allows you to customize it a bit more, make it a bit more friendlier, but we can use it for whatever purposes we need. There you go, that's module 1.